Hey there, CS360 students. So in this recording, I'm going to go through implementing our band application using an SQLite database. So now that we've seen how to configure and get SQLite running in an Android application, let's see how it's used in our band application. So first thing is I've got the band database file opened up in that application. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a different version called bands database that will have all the SQLite hookup. I'm going to leave this in here just that way if students have questions about something, how it was working before, I still have it available. Now, the main functionality of this band database is not going to change. We are still going to use a singleton instance. So we're still going to use a singleton. We're still going to have a private constructor. What's going to change is we're not going to be using the string arrays anymore, so that's going to not be utilized. And then in terms of the get bands, get band, add, edit, and delete, this functionality is going to be the exact same. Only difference being is we're not going to be manipulating the list. We're going to actually work with our SQLite database. So things like returning a Boolean for the delete and edit methods, letting us know if those operations were successful, returning the new ID of the band that's been added to the database, and then again, getting the band and getting the bands. So what I did was I created, again, a new file called bands database. And so let's go take a look at it. So here, this is going to extend the SQLite open helper. And as such, we need to have the version, the database name, and then again, we could copy and paste some code from the original band database. So I've got the private static instance variable, and then its constructor takes the context, gets passed up to the SQLite open helper constructor along with the database name, null, and the version. The get instance method doesn't need to be changed at all from the initial implementation. And then next thing we have is the class of constants. So the table name, the column ID, the column name, and the column description. These are all the parts of the band information that we are saving. So in the onCreate method, we're going to create the table. The ID column is an integer. We're going to let it be the primary key, and it's going to auto increment. So before in the band database, remember, we hooked up a next band ID. We don't need to do that anymore because this will auto increment and give us a new identifier each time. We're then going to have the column name as well as the column for the description. Some more boilerplate code, the on upgrade. So again, we basically copy and paste from our previous examples. And then next thing we have here is we've got the get band. So let's get this cleaned up. This should be a public method right there. And so we are going to get a list of type band. And again, this is probably kind of rehashed in some of the other videos, but what I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a list. And then I'm going to immediately return it down here at the end. So if there is nothing in the database, we will return to them an empty list, which is fine. We're going to then get our database. We're going to run our select star from the table query, and then the cursor running the raw query is going to contain all of the information. So again, this is very similar to what we've seen before. So if we can move to the first, so if there is an element, then we're going to loop while we can still move to the next one. And the idea here is we're going to have the ID. So we're going to get that from the from our cursor. The name is in position 1 and the description is in position 2. I'll then go ahead and create a band object with the ID, name, and description, and then it gets added to the list. So this will continue as it reads rows from the database. Oh, by the way, we are going to change up a couple things here. So the band object has an int value as the ID, and we're actually going to change that up to be a long. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of make that change right here. So I want that to be a long, and we want this to be a long up here. And let's go to our band class. And the ID, I want it to be a long because what's going to happen inside SQLite is it actually returns back to us a long instead of an integer. So we don't want to have any kind of a potential data mismatch. So let's go ahead and get those straightened out. So everywhere I've got a integer for the ID, I'm going to make it a long. And so this is long, and I'm just going to copy this. So this is a long, and that should be cleaned up in here. Yes, it looks like I am good to go here. We do have some related problems, so I'm going to go ahead and click on those. And inside my band database, so that's going to have an effect on my where am I? I'm in details fragment. So let's go ahead and just kind of get these cleaned up here. So again, I can go back to there. I can click the related problems, and they will be displayed down here. So I can just click on the first one. And so this needs to be a long right here. So edit band. Well, this is going to become band's database. So that'll fix that. And let's go to the next one. So that's cleaned up. Let's go to this one. So again, this will be band's database. So that gets cleaned up. Let's double check. Did this get cleaned up? Band's database. Yeah, that's all good. So my details fragment, we'll be kind of fixing these as we go along. Let's come back in here. So get band, this band ID. Oh, I need to do a long.toString here. So there's our get band code. So very similar to the get bands. However, what we're going to do here is we're going to select where we have a matching ID here. And so in this case, we're going to check if we can move to the first. Then we're going to go ahead and get the first values, the name, the description, and we'll create a new band from it, which then gets returned. If this does not exist, it's going to return a null. So in the add band method, again, if you take a look here, this insert method, if it will pop up the documentation, let me go to the declaration. So this, where did it go? Insert. Here we go. So this insert method that's in the SQLite database class, it returns a long. So that's why we need to change ours to make sure that we match this. So we're going to have our writable database. We'll put in our band name, our band description, and then we're going to insert that into the table, and this will return back our new ID. The edit band, again, it takes a long for the existing ID, a band object that has been updated, and then we're going to put in the ID, put in the name, put in the description, and then we call the update method, give it the name of the table, give it the where clause that it's matching up on. So we're going to match up on the ID that came in. And then this returns the number of records that were updated. So we are expecting that this should be greater than 0. In fact, really what I should do is this should be returning a 1. We should expect 1 record to be updated here. The delete band, we're going to get the writable database. And then same deal, we're going to call its delete method on the database, give it the table, and then here's the where clause that we are checking on. So the column ID has to match the ID. And since this is the primary key, we are only expecting 1 result. So we'll check that the result is 1 here. Okay, so I think I've got the bands database all hooked up there. So next thing I want to do is let's go in this band database and let's see if I have any usage of the get instance method. And that's kind of where I need to look to change the band database calls to bands database. So let's go find those usages. And so here we go. So that's going to become bands database. Again, since we have the exact same information, we don't really need to change much. Let's go back here and usages. So let's go to the next one here. Oops, I want that one. So let's go here. And this is bands database. We are adding a band, so this has to become a long. And that is all cleaned up. And now we have one more usage. So this becomes bands database, and we are getting all of the bands there. All right, so cross your fingers. We shouldn't have any references to any of these methods in the band database. Get instance no longer has any references. And the get bands, get band, none of these have any references that are being used. So great. Let's go ahead and get this up and running. And let's see if our updated version works where we are using the database. So when this starts up, we shouldn't have anything in here because we are no longer reading from the canned data that is in those string XML files. So let's go ahead and add a band. So we'll add in the Beatles. We'll just say British Rockers. We'll click OK, and great, that's been added. We can click it and we can see the name of the band and the description. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and go back one. We'll add in a couple more. So we'll add in Metallica, 80s heavy metal. Click OK. So that gets added. So let's go ahead and stop this. Let's rerun it, and we should have, because we have a persistable database, we should be getting our band information. And sure enough, there it is. We're getting that information. So if we want to edit this, so 80s heavy metal, so we can edit this, and we can say 80s to 90s heavy metal. I know they've got some other current content out there, but in my opinion, that's their heyday. So we'll click OK, and sure enough, that's been updated. Let's go back. Let's add in an additional band. So we'll put in the Bee Gees, Disco Fever. We'll add that. And let's say that we no longer like the Bee Gees in our database, so we can delete that. So cross your fingers, that information has now been deleted. So you can see that we've gone from taking a recycler view with a database that was reading in those string values to now we have not only the ability to add, edit, and delete, but we can also now persist it using our database. Okay, as always, if you have questions, make sure that you send them.